The Enlightenment of the Greengage Tree by Shokoofeh Azar. Chapter 1. Beta says that Mom attained enlightenment at exactly 2:35 p.m. on August 18, 1988, atop the grove's tallest greengage plum tree on a hill overlooking all 53 village houses, to the sound of the scrubbing of pots and pans, a ruckus that pulled the grove out of its lethargy every afternoon. At that very moment, blindfolded and hands tied behind his back, Sohrab was hanged. He was hanged without trial, and unaware he would be buried en masse with hundreds of other political prisoners early the next morning in a long pit in the deserts south of Tehran, without any indication or marker lest a relative come years later and tap a pebble on a headstone and murmur, "There is no God but God." Beta says Mom came down from the tallest greengage tree and, without looking at Beta, who was filling her skirt with sour greengages, walked towards the forest, saying, "This is not at all as I'd thought." Beta wanted Mom to explain, but Mom, as though mesmerized, like someone with forest fever, what I call forest melancholia, walked with a steady step and hollow gaze into the forest to climb up the tallest oak, where she sat on its highest branch for 3 days and 3 nights in the sun, rain, and moonlight and fog, looking with bewilderment at the life she was seeing for the first time.
So published underground in Iran, originally written in Farsi and translated into English by an anonymous translator, published by Europa Editions. It's a story of ghosts, full of magical language that turns into a torrent of words. So a magical realism of sorts goes through the whole of this story, but with a very real historical backdrop and deeply meaningful use of a whole series of ghost figures who all point towards what could have been, what should have been, and who fit together as a portrait of a very real family, torn apart and damaged, father, mother, and sons and daughters trying to survive a revolution.
So the novel style is on magic realism, but there are some parts that directly I use from my personal experiences. For example, my parents' name is Rosa and Hushang, as the same is in the story. And also the location of the Razan, the village that I describe in my novel, is exactly the same of village, almost same of village that I experienced in my childhood. Also, for example, another story that I use in my novel, when mullahs attack to their family and they burn the books in the jungle before the mullahs receive to the house. So it is exactly that I experienced when I was a child. For example, as a journalist, I heard many stories from the people, so I use many of them. And also I use lots of my dreams that I had, or imagination that I had, vision that I had, meditation, for example, I use that in my novel. There is no even one paragraph in my novel that, or religion facts, or even folklore.
Beta wanted Mum to explain, but Mum is so mesmerised, like someone with forest fever, what I call forest melancholia, walked with a steady step and a hollow gaze into the forest to climb up the tallest oak tree, where she sat on its highest bough for 3 days and 3 nights, in the sun, rain, moonlight and fog, looking with bewilderment at the life she was seeing for the first time. Just as Mum reached the highest branch, perched to view her own life, the complex lives of families both distant and near, the events of the big 5-bedroom house in that 5-hectare grove, Razan, Tehran, Iran, and suddenly the whole planet and universe. Beta ran to the house and announced that though still harbouring a mania for fireflies, Mum also had a new mania for heights. At first, none of us took our new infatuation seriously. When midnight had come and gone, and there was still no sign of her, first I, then Dad, then Beta, carrying a lantern, went and sat under the tree. We lit a fire which we placed a zinc kettle so the fragrance of our smoked tea would fill the Jurassic Age. Hyrcanian forest, the last of its kind, and lower Mum down. The fragrance of the northern smoked tea reached Mum's nostrils as she was traversing the Milky Way, watching the stars and planets spinning and orbiting with astonishing order, every rotation of which split an open space for which scientists hopefully searched for a sign of God. From up there, perched on stardust, gazing down at Earth no bigger than a tiny speck, she came to the same conclusion she had reached that day at precisely 2:35 p.m. It's not worth it.
The translation reads extremely well in the English language. In English, it reads as a sort of magical torrent of words that bring us through a mixture of poetry, folklore, Iranian cultural references that are both strange to us but very deftly translated into English in such a way that the reader is able to go along with the story even if each cultural reference is not entirely clear or familiar to them. I felt it was one of the most exciting books on this list to read for that reason, because it's such an opening into a world of cultural reference, while at the same time being a reflection on the possible meaning of all these references in a completely changed world, in a context of political violence, which is also being very clearly narrated throughout the story.
What part of translating this book did you like the most? I think one of the things I enjoyed most about the translation of this work is also what made it most challenging. Persian is, practically by nature, a very poetic language, and Shokoofeh's style of writing really capitalized on that in a unique way. Searching for the best way to translate things can be exhilarating when you test out the effect of it on your own body, play with words, and test the boundaries of language. The richness and depth of the Persian scenes and choice of words created some sections that literally took my breath away. Testing the capacity of the English language to accommodate that is fabulous. All these factors made translating the Enlightenment of the Greengage Tree a great experience. What did you find most challenging? As mentioned above, Persian is a poetic language. Capturing the poetry of certain words or the buildup of scene through language was extremely challenging. Shokoofeh's writing takes that poetry inherent in Persian and adds another layer to it. She adds magic. The effect in Persian can be amazing, but turning it into workable English while remaining true to the author is a huge challenge. I feel language in a very visceral way, and I know this has been tempered by my exposure and knowledge of other languages. I think, therefore, one of these things I have found most difficult in translating work like Shokoofeh's is being confident enough on the plasticity of English to accommodate, and not being afraid of putting something out there that's different or unusual. It's been a huge learning process for me that I can only hope to build on. Another aspect of the book that was particularly difficult was the poetry. Classical poetry is particularly difficult to translate. It's composed of so many facets that all contribute to the whole. In translation, something is inevitably lost. How would you describe the book in just a few words? Powerful, frustrating, an emotional roller coaster. How do you feel about being shortlisted for the International Booker Prize and having to remain anonymous? From the very beginning, remaining anonymous has prompted some soul-searching. Given the book's subject matter, there's good reason for not revealing one's identity. Yet, it has led to emotions ranging from that of cowardice on my part to concern for those whom I love and care for in Iran. Now, with the recognition of the book that the International Booker Prize has brought, if nothing else, I've been sorely tempted for reasons of pride to reveal my identity. It's difficult, and a shame in a way. It's something I'm still debating. But I'm not the only person potentially affected by the decision.